Polyphony Digital, formerly known as Poly's Entertainment, is a Japanese first-party development studio for Sony, and one that hasn't shut down yet. The studio is known for one series and one series alone, Gran Turismo. When you think of racing games on the PlayStation, you think of this highly revered series. Best-selling games on nearly all of Sony's systems, synonymous with near-realistic driving mechanics that would get more realistic the better the hardware got, and a passion for cars and racing at a rather professional level. You can feel that passion whenever you play almost any Gran Turismo game. It's a series that will always showcase the true power of any PlayStation console it's released on, and it's still going strong to this day to some various extent. It doesn't matter what PlayStation you have, there will be a Gran Turismo game for that system. Even the PlayStation 5 is getting a Gran Turismo game with its 7th iteration. Hold on. I just got a report that the PlayStation Vita did in fact not get a Gran Turismo game. That's kind of an oof. Anyway, the man behind the series, the games, the passion and the dedication is the CEO of the studio, Kazunori Yamauchi, a man who loves cars, so much so that he's dedicated himself to the Gran Turismo series, and also for a few years became a professional racing driver, even winning a couple of races to boot. What a chad! But you're not here for Gran Turismo, you're here for the games that were the predecessor to the popular PlayStation series, because despite Yamauchi pitching a near-realistic driving simulator to Sony executives, they declined. So Yamauchi, in his infinite wisdom, pitched a kart racing game originally titled Poly Circuit GP, and the execs agreed for him to develop this simply because it was easier to understand, thanks to the success of Nintendo's Super Mario Kart from 1992. Never change gaming industry, though the team at Poly's would technically develop Gran Turismo on the side with the Motor Toon Grand Prix games. Yamauchi hoped that with the potential success of the game, he could pitch the driving simulator game he truly wanted to make. A risky move, and from a modern mind's perspective, paid off big time. So yeah, the bloke started out making kart racing games, and while Sega's Power Drift was the template for what would entail later down the road, it was Nintendo that near enough established and wrote the rules for the genre with Super Mario Kart, which led to the likes of less popular games like Street Racer and Wacky Wheels. However, we ended up getting critically acclaimed titles like Diddy Kong Racing and Crash Team Racing. I'll say this now, the Motor Toon Grand Prix games are very basic titles, a little mediocre like Street Racer and not as in-depth akin to Crash Team Racing. I know the latter was released years later, but it's to give you a reference on what you should expect from these games. Now, this was quite difficult finding information about said games and then figuring out which one to play. So, Motor Toon Grand Prix was only released in Japan, but there was a sequel called Motor Toon Grand Prix 2, but this sequel was released in the US as Motor Toon Grand Prix since the US didn't get the sequel. But in Europe, they kept the 2 in despite the first game not being released in Europe. Can you see how confusing this is? And because of this, finding any info on the first game is quite difficult, though someone in a forum I looked into a while ago said the game should have been called Cartoon Grand Prix. Damn, that really was a missed opportunity. But with that said, onto the first game, and I don't mean the Western version yet, I mean the Japanese original. See? Confusing, isn't it?
あれなんだキャーキャーキャー何いやーびっくりしたなもう初めての 3D キャラクターレーシングゲームモータートゥーングランプリだよプレイステーション
Developed by Poly's and published by Sony Computer Entertainment Japan, Motor Toon Grand Prix was released on the 16th of December 1994 in Japan only, roughly over 2 weeks after the release of the PlayStation in that country. I played the game on original hardware and a revision wanted the game on an emulator. I owned the game anyway, but I was just curious as all. You'll see that footage and a bit of footage recorded from real hardware for reference, which is what you'd call Revision 0. Motor Toon Grand Prix is a rather simple if a bit chaotic racing game for the PlayStation. Think of Super Mario Kart but with full 3D polygons. A unique aspect are the car models as they bounce and stretch whenever they move around, really driving home the cartoon aesthetic in a way no other game has done before at the time, though it still feels limited in what they could do due to the limitations of the system. Like any racer with its salt, you simply race to win with multiple laps and many courses. In terms of power-ups, there is only one. Getting a devil gets you nothing, but an angel puts you out of the car and you get to sprint through the track for a short period of time. Seeing this is just bizarre, but it makes me think of what a 3D Sonic game that wasn't Sonic R could have been back in the day. Just a little food for thought. Though getting an angel is a rare bastard as you're more likely getting a devil. Might as well not add any power-ups. For the modes, we start with the main meat of the game, Grand Prix, with 3 difficulties and 3 tracks. Yes, only 3 tracks. The first is Toon Island. It has a lot of greenery, but it's meant to be the first world in that everything looks nice and calm and has a consistent design. I like this one. Plastic Lake has the essence of a Formula 1 racing track, but a lot more futuristic and a lot more messy and ugly. In short, this track is a complete and utter mess. There's a checkered part of the track with deep hills and holes. There's no consistency to the design. It's so cluttered with pointless shit that there's a point where you're meant to go through a tunnel, but the game's design is so blind and you'll instantly miss it if you didn't race through the track beforehand. This happened to me and I ended up crashing into a wall, not knowing where to go. It's track design at its absolute worst. Too many ideas and no one saying they should stop, think and properly analyze why this might not work. The final track of GP is Gulliver House. From what I can gather, it's themed around stuff you'd find in a family home. It's also supposed to be this small individual in a giant house kind of track. Oh, Gulliver, I get it. Anyway, I would have enjoyed it if the track also wasn't a complete mess to go around on and more shit in the way, and that casino table part of the track, like, why? But at the very least it has some kind of consistency unlike Plastic Lake, and that's all you're getting in terms of Grand Prix, 3 tracks. The amount is minute for a racing game, but if you wanted more, then you can play through the Match Race and Duel Race. Match Race and Duel Races have more straightforward tracks, with some being more difficult to get through, though for whatever reason you can't access them in the main menu, though you can access them through the Time Attack mode, where you race on tracks to get the best time. You only properly access Match and Duel Races in multiplayer. There are 5 characters you can select: Captain Rock the pilot, Princess Jean, Ballbox the robot, Penguin Bros, and Raptor the aliens. Like many kart races including Super Mario Kart, each vehicle controls differently. Without any proper information to go by, albeit we do get information but it's in Japanese, Captain Rock and Princess Jean are the all-rounders, so they're comfortable to control. Ballbox is the heavy machine and is a little difficult to control. The Penguin Bros are for those who are more skill-based as you need to drift well, and Raptor are the fastest but the most difficult to control. Half the time it's like they're slipping on ice. It just feels weird, but you can get used to it. The cars in terms of a concept art, I like them. They're overly exaggerated in looks, but they have personality, which makes sense for a game paying homage to the concept of a cartoon. But this is also due to the cars being designed around the characters driving them. Captain Rock looks to be a speedster with personality and attitude, so his car emphasizes that. Princess Jean is a female and a princess, so our car has a royal yet feminine attire. Raptor are aliens, therefore their vehicle is a sci-fi hover car. The Penguin Bros are gangster-like, primo mafioso if you will, so their car is something you'd find in the 1920s, a cartoony version of the Ford Model T, having a mischievous shit-eating grin. And Ballbox is a robot, and a tough-looking one at that, so his vehicle has this miniature monster truck look to it. Also driving Ballbox's vehicle, look at it, his behind is jiggling from side to side. This car is fixed, son.
What you doing out here with all this ass? Double cheeked up on a Thursday afternoon, hella ass, the sun is still out.
Damn, boy, he's thick! Boy, that's a thick ass boy! Damn!
What's wrong with you?
The gameplay is decent. There's a kind of stiffness you can feel, especially when it comes to doing tight turns, but it plays well overall, just nice and simple mechanics. Yamauchi wanted to create the sensation of handling a remote control car, but with the dynamics you'd expect from a real car. Now apart from the tight turns feeling rather amazing and oddly snappy, which by the way is immensely satisfying when doing so, the driving mechanics are just okay, nothing too special. But this was a game from 1994 and before Gran Turismo, so I'm not expecting realistic driving mechanics, but Yamauchi promised that in this game alone. Then again, the game has slipstream, which is surprising but much welcomed, though I don't think it works properly half the time. Also, who are these cars? Why are they here? Probably because if they weren't, the races would feel empty, because making big tracks with 5 characters is a very misguided idea. In fact, due to the lack of more races, the tracks do feel empty and boring and nearly put me to sleep. The big issue I have with the game is the difficulty. Let me explain. When playing on GP mode, you have easy, normal and hard. How this works is that the easy mode has AI that is much slower, and as long as you do your best in the race, you will win. Normal has AI that are much faster, meaning it's very difficult to get past them. You might scrape a win by the skin of your teeth if you're lucky, but in terms of hard, forget about ever winning. The AI is perfect, they are faster than you, smarter than you, and no matter how perfect you are in a race, you will lose. That or you need to be very skilled enough to get a win. But I don't feel the game is fun enough to get good at it, and if I'm not having fun, why bother playing it in the future? In short, there is no proper difficulty balance. Even Super Mario Kart from 1992 got it right. It's one of the more disappointing aspects to this game. In terms of the Rev 1 build, I feel that the game is much harder, where easy might get you a scrape of a win by luck, whilst normal and hard are just borderline bullshit, because no matter how fast or skilled you are, you will never go far enough to win. It's busted. How the hell did a revision ruin its already flawed balance? The graphics are impressive for 1994, the texture mapping is smooth and manages to hide any proper hard edges, at least if you're playing on a CRT. But despite the technical achievements, it looks dated nowadays, but that's okay. It showed off what the PlayStation could do, but we would get much better later on, which is a given considering that this was pretty much the first game developed in-house for the system. The HUD design is incredibly basic, but then I realized that there's no map on the corner, which is prevalent in many racing games to let you know where you are on the track, which could explain why I had a hard time driving through Plastic Lake and Gulliver House. The art design is pretty good though, with character designs illustrated by Susumu Matsushita. He has an art style that has a mix of western cartoons with a hint of eastern influences too. It's sort of strange, but it ends up looking great. He's also done work on Hudson Soft's Adventure Island series, Monkey Magic, Maximo, has made mascots for many Famitsu spin-off magazines, and designed a cartoon mouse that was the mascot for former Shueisha seinen magazine Business Jump. The character designs aren't too memorable. You barely see them in game, and the only time you do see them is when they've won or lost. They're just characters in the game for the sake of it. They don't get their proper chance to shine. If you're making a game revolving around the fact that it's set in a cartoony world, the characters have to be memorable in some way. Again, you'll see their unique reactions to winning or losing, but that's not enough. In short, they're poorly one note. Also, this is more of a gameplay aspect, but I don't like the fact that with the cartoony style, you can't bash into opponents to decide. Think about it. Bashing your opponents can make them squish to decide like any good animation from days gone by, and in some cases, even today. They drive still and can never be moved or pushed to decide. It makes racing dull and sadly boring. Motor Toon Grand Prix is a decent racer and a solid early PlayStation game. It looks impressive for 1994 and plays decently, but it has too many major problems that prevent it from standing up to today's standards. In short, poor track design of 2 out of the 3 tracks, and it could have been designed much better. Poor difficulty balance, especially if you're playing the Revision 1 build, and great character designs not being fully taken advantage of. It could have been better, but it's put down by the fact that it's still an early PlayStation game. Rather unfortunate, but time isn't always kind to everything or everyone, and it wasn't kind to this title. Though because it's an early PlayStation game, I'll forgive the rough edges. If you really want to play this, stick with the original release of Motor Toon Grand Prix. Do not play Revision 1. It took a flawed game and somehow made it worse. For my next segment, skip to this timecode here if you want to see the review of the sequel. For those still here, let's talk about the Demo PlayStation Volume 1 from as early as 1994. You can only play this and other discs in the same series in kiosks and retail stores if you lived in Japan. Nowadays hard to find as a result, though I can't think why anyone would want to pay exuberant amounts of money for a demo disc. One day, especially in places outside of Japan, I just know it. Anyway, this had a demo of the game, but Captain Rock is in the intro to the Demo disc with him standing on top of the PlayStation. He will be the host of this demo. In the menu, the People's Racer himself in text and voice explains what each selection is. The Motor Toon Grand Prix demo is, well, not the usual demo you'd expect. You can only control the camera, the racer, and simply watch as the race just goes on for a few minutes until it decides to end. How this was supposed to entice customers to buy the blooming game is anyone's guess. Also, here's a model of Captain Rock you can play around with. And here's the Demo PlayStation special disc from August 1995. You'd get this disc from either magazine advertisements or a gaming retail store. Captain Rock is once again the host of this disc. In fact, the opening and visuals are the same as Volume 1. In terms of the Motor Toon GP demo, you can drive in all 3 tracks in time trial mode with Captain Rock. The disc even had a comic with Captain Rock and the Mew Mew alien from Jumpin' Flash. They're here to promote the PlayStation service and the PlayStation Club. If you want to read them, Jamie Happer translated them in his video where he talked about the 2 demos I've briefly covered. So if you want to know more about these demos, you go to him. His channel is where I discovered that these demos were a thing, so thanks Jimmy. This really helped to make the video more informative. Again, go check him out after you watch this. The link will be down below. And finally, here's a much earlier version of the game in a PlayStation PV and more clearer footage from the Demo Volume 1 disc. This actually looks completely different, like Wow, where's this version? You got different vehicles from the final release, the tracks are different, and Captain Rock looks to be in a blue jacket instead of red. And here he is in his original costume. His final one suits him much better in my opinion. Heck, when selecting the Motor Toon GP demo in Demo PlayStation Volume 1, the cover art looks completely different to the final product. I almost missed that. I know it's weird for me to talk about early versions of games. Will I do this for future reviews? Maybe so, maybe not. This is an obscure series of games, so I feel it would be interesting to make the one and only Motor Toon Grand Prix video that has everything you need to know about the game, even with the lack of understanding of a Japanese language. A Westerner's views on a Japanese game, to say the least. What? I did say you could skip it.
ママ今朝の味噌汁の
危ない。パパが話してるの。
話の腰が折られたよ。
ママ。はいはい。発射。
パワーアップしたモータートゥーングランプリ USA ベストシリーズから日八で。
それで
味噌汁あれ濃かったよ。
プレイステーション。
さあ2台一斉にスタートしました。息もつかせる展開です。第2コーナーを回っておーっと相手だ。32トン32トンです。ああ熱くなってきましたね。通信対戦モータートゥーングランプリ2
プレイステーション。
2 years after the first iteration, Motor Toon Grand Prix 2 was released. Again, the US and Europe got this one, and I've already explained the confusing name change and how Sony has gone out of its way to make the first game as obscure as possible. Anyway, the sequel has 5 new tracks, albeit a couple of new ones and the rest return. Toon Island 2 is more of the same, but it looks nicer. Like the first iteration, it's a track that you can practice to get to grips with the gameplay. Toon Village is exactly what it is. The track design is pretty decent. It doesn't really have anything that makes it stand out all that much, but yeah, like Toon Island, it just looks nice. Crazy Coaster gives me vibes of Plastic Lake, but this track is way more consistent and a lot more fun. Quite easy to follow and it's designed so well. The part of the track that's transparent is my favourite path. I just love the design of it. God of a House 2 is the new version of God of a House, and it's a massive improvement. The track design has more heavy emphasis that you're a small racer in a giant person's house, but it's still as random as before. These giants need to clean their bloody house. What are they, hoarders? Haunted Castle is that one Castlevania arcade game I covered a while ago. It's also a horror themed track where you go through a town, then a cave, and into a castle along with the trappings of said haunted castle. This is where the tracks get difficult to go through. At one point there's a path where you can easily fall off the track, so you gotta be careful around here, but I like it. I wouldn't say it's one of my favourites, but it's yet another track that's designed pretty well. If you win championship races of various difficulty, you unlock stuff, and one of those unlocks are additional tracks. But these tracks are the same 5 available tracks but mirrored, and each track has a different theme. I'm honestly impressed with how lazy and at the same time how amazed I am at this recycling. And it's done well here, but these tracks really are difficult. These tracks were not made to be mirrored this way, but to add them to the track menu instead of a dedicated mirror mode is a bit of a cheek, to be honest. But the track designs overall are a far cry over the original. They might not be as memorable as other tracks in other kart games, but they're fun to go through. Quite charming too. All the characters from the first game return, but if you beat the championship mode on easy, you unlock 3 new characters: Vanity, the unitard wearing biker chick, Billy the tough, the train conductor, and Ching Tong Shang, the Asian stereotype, particularly of the Chinese variety. At the very least, we get small snippets of cutscenes in the opening to establish the characters, as well as their dedicated game over screens. Unfortunately, it's not much, so the characters still feel one note. I thought that aspect would be improved. What were the developers doing that could have been more time to develop these Oh, Gran Turismo. Yeah, fair enough. Motor Toon GP2 finally adds more than one power-up. In fact, there's a good chunk of them, but their effectiveness can be hit or miss. You got rockets, 32-ton weights, turbo, fireball, shrink, grow, and more. Say, what is this Pandora's box? Holy fuck, this shit is cursed. You think that's disturbing? The clock will give you a few seconds of vibes from that one special stage from Sonic CD. But to get a power-up, you collect coins by driving over them like Super Mario Kart. Though you press the circle button to use a coin to get a power-up, and you'll get one picked at random. You can collect a good chunk of coins, enough to get by most races. Just spam it, and maybe, just maybe, you might gain victory. Not all the time, even on the hardest difficulties, but you just might. What does this cloaking device do? Nothing. I can change sizes depending on the power up. It does nothing. Bombs are cool to use, but opponents in harder difficulties other than expert and professional, I swear, spams bombs like no tomorrow. The game has 5 difficulty settings: easy, normal, hard, expert and professional. The first 3 difficulties are similar to the original, and I mean revision 0 original, but expert and professional removes power-ups for you and the opponents, so it's much fairer when racing against them, with a similar experience to the first game just without the angel/devil power-up. The driving mechanics feel similar to the first game, but some races feel so off-putting to drive with due to how stiff and at times unresponsive it can feel, that being trying to make tight turns feel impossible to pull off, though it depends on the racer. To simply put, you gotta get used to certain drivers. I can drive on tracks easily with Captain Rock and Princess Jean, but with other racers, you gotta get used to handling some of them. Some might say that different players will have a racer that suits them. Maybe you want a racer that is well-rounded, someone who is easy to drive with, someone who is fast but has tricky handling, and so it goes. To those people I say, yes, you're more or less correct. However, getting used to this game was not easy. I don't like the driving mechanics and I don't like most of the races. I wasn't having fun with the experience that I had to take a break from it, and when I went back to play a few days later, my experience and views on the sequel changed a little, but it still could have been better in a few aspects. Now I'll talk about the issues that I supposedly had when experiencing what it had to offer the first time playing it. At first I thought the game didn't have drifting mechanics, but reading up on the manual online, because it was literally hard to find one, I bought and played this on the PlayStation 3 and that manual sucks. It turns out the game does allow you to drift. It's just that the mechanics here are something to get used to. How it works is that when you're turning, you gotta quickly let go of the accelerate button, then press and hold the brake button to slide. Hopping back to the accelerate button will bring your vehicle out of drift. This is something that should work in practice, and it sounds similar to how Super Mario Kart implemented it, though in this game it can feel a little stiff and unresponsive, in addition to the fact that some races have such unique specifications that drifting is quite challenging, the Penguin Bros being an example of this. The more I played this game the first time round, the more frustrated I was with it, and in my sheer arrogance I went and played Crash Team Racing to fill any differences, and yep, there are big differences. The driving mechanics are tight, very responsive, drifting has been implemented in a way that feels really good to use. I haven't played CTR in about 2 decades, and in the 10 minutes I had with this game gave me far more entertainment and chill than Motor Toon Grand Prix 2, sorry to say. I know it might not be fair considering that Motor Toon GP2 came out in 1996 while CTR came out in 1999, but I added this part to compare how much enjoyment you might get from one of the two. Heck, Mario Kart 64 is as basic of a kart racer than Motor Toon GP2, and it's still more entertaining. It's not that Motor Toon GP2 is a bad game, it's just that we live in a world where we got a better version of what Motor Toon GP2 had to offer and then some. CTR's gameplay is just more satisfying. Do you think my views on this game are unfair? You might think that, you might like the game, and I find it okay. But I like my kart racing games with more responsive mechanics and not wondering what I might have done wrong for most races. Oh, the game has multiplayer, but before you get a friend in hand, you need 2 PlayStations, 2 copies of Motor Toon Grand Prix 2, 2 controllers, 2 tellies, and a PlayStation link cable. Question, who did this link cable business? I really want to know, because this is madness looking back. The whole point of the link cable functionality was to emulate the racing arcade experience, but it's more cumbersome than convenient even for the time. I know PC users did it when playing their games, but anyone who did that are hardcore geeks with more time to dedicate to LAN pies and more brains. The PlayStation is for the more casual player, so I doubt link cabling is something most people did back then. Again, I'm playing this via the PlayStation 3, and since it's lacking link cable functionality, you can only go solo. So it's a good chunk of the game that is vastly inaccessible. When Super Mario Kart can put off split screen multiplayer but a 32-bit game can't, you gotta realize how embarrassing that is. At the very least, later races on the PlayStation would implement split screen functionality. Even Gran Turismo had this feature too. So link cabling is near useless if you want simple multiplayer fun without the hassle of a LAN system for consoles. But hey, we traded that shit for online gaming. How you feel about that is up to you. Oh, one more thing to note before I move on. The Japanese version came with 2 discs. With disc 2, I think allows you to play the 2-player battle mode, though in these races you only race against another player with no CPUs to make the races fun. Yeah, this is awful. The multiplayer info on this game is incredibly vague. No one gave a shit about the link cable function to even talk about it that much, especially online. Graphics are much better than the first game. It heavily emphasizes the cartoony aspect far more than the first game, which is exactly what I'd expected from this sequel. In fact, remember when I complained about the lack of dynamic collision when you bash into opponents? Well, it sort of has that. It's not completely exaggerated, but it feels just about right. The The level design overall is a lot grander and fully realised, almost as if the developers actually knew when not to go too overboard like the first game. It's colourful, it's unique even for the time, and each track has a personality of its own in a way that make them distinct from each other. I know the first title had the same aspect too, but good tracks mean I can appreciate them a little bit more. The camera is a little weird, as you can change the angle of it like any decent racing game. Like the first game, you got regular third person, first person, and far away. With regular third person, it can be rather problematic at times, especially when you're going downhill as it clips out of the track, and you'll see the oncoming tracks below and going uphill and down, blocking your view of the track. Might not be an issue all the time, but when there's bombs on the tracks, it's gonna hurt. Before I continue on, let's check out the Japan-only demo it got via the Demo PlayStation Volume 16, for there are some differences I want to check out. Now, I'm not going to explain the contents of the demo disc, just this particular demo itself, otherwise we'll be here all day. This video is long enough already at this point. Firstly, on the Poly's title card, the text is different from what was eventually released. It says, New Generation Game Making Project, Sony Computer Entertainment Inc. and Bandit Inc. The full release of all versions changes it to SCEI, Software Development Division 1, Bandit Inc., Opus Corp. The game's title screen where you press start to enter the menu only shows the game's logo and a unique background in the demo, but the full release of all regions replaces it with the European and Japanese only cover art. The US would get this title screen, but the logo has been replaced with the US variant. The menu has Champion Race, Single Race, Time Attack, Free Run, 2 Players Battle, Replay Theatre and Exit. The full release of all regions would add options and goodies, and players in 2 Players Battle would remove the S. The music in the demo's menu is also different compared to the full release of all regions. In the demo, Free Run and Exit are the only choices you can select. You can only play as Captain Rock and can only play on the Toon Village course with no opponents, and you got 3 minutes to play it before the game soft locks you out of the demo with a black screen showing the words "Coming Soon" written on it. When you go back to the demo menu, you get some info on the game in Japanese, so I can't really read it other than that the game will be priced 5,800 yen. When the game starts, the camera swerves around as it descends, but unlike the full release, there's no full throttle where the car drives to the starting position. It remains stationary at the starting point until you can accelerate. The announcer that usually counts down is not heard in this demo. The music is a mere prototype of the full releases version, almost as if it's unfinished, which is to be expected. The HUD is different to the full release too. The speedometer is more generic looking, and with the vector looking numbers, this may have been a placeholder for what the developers wanted to add, as the full release got a more stylish and dynamic looking speedometer. The coin HUD text is coloured white, whilst the full release was coloured yellow. The track layout is in the bottom right in the demo, but was moved to the middle left in the full release. When you pass through the starting line, there is no text like in the full release, but the jingle plays regardless. Other than that, the track is the same with not much significant changes, and you can still use power-ups despite having no one to race with. So they're pointless to use, but trying them out anyway gives you a little bit of knowledge on how they'll work in the full game. I think I'm done with the demo, but it's nice to see a version of a game before its official release, to see what changes were made before we got finalized stuff. Now back to the game, and for the next segment, unlockables. And yes, there's more than just simply additional characters and mirrored tracks. There's also minigames of various genres. Tank combat is pretty much battle zone. You shoot down all enemy tanks and you're off to the next level. Lose all your hearts and it's game over. Not my favourite, but it was fun for like 5 minutes. Submarine X is basically Battleship, and it's so out of place with this game, but it's actually my favourite minigame. Spending hours playing Battleship on an iPod many years ago can do that to you. And then there's Motor Toon Grand Prix R, where you, well, drive realistic cars around Toon Island. Now, this isn't my favourite either, but it's one I appreciate. Look at this and tell me this isn't the stepping stones to Gran Turismo. This is it. This was a taster of things to come. This is the kind of game Poly's was working on. I mean, it's slippery as all hell, but it's still admirable to think about. But is the game worth 100% for the unlockables? Nope. I use cheat codes to unlock everything, and thank goodness for that, because I'm not interested in 100% in the Motor Toon GP2. Mind you, it has its good parts. The graphics are good, the bounciness of the races are just as charming as the original, the track designs are great, the music, which I didn't properly talk about, was decent, and the unlockables were admirable in all the right ways. The gameplay can be a slow and steady learning curve due to how sluggish it might feel. Like I've said, it's a product of its time and better games in the kart genre would come out later, making this a little obsolete, even more with how multiplayer was implemented. Some of you may like it for what it is and how it plays, and that's fine. I feel the gameplay for me has been tarnished because I've played so much better kart racing games, and this title's niggles become massively noticeable. Motor Toon GP2 is a game I can't exactly recommend to new players. It's a decent racer but a bit dated, but if you had fond memories with it, try out again. But for anyone else, just play Crash Team Racing, or the remake. I haven't played that one. However, we're not done yet. In 1997, Japan got Motor Toon Grand Prix USA Edition, a re-release and a re-import of the Western version according to Japanese Wikipedia. So why would they re-release this if it's the same game? And yes, it is, but it's been rebalanced to improve the gameplay. So what has changed? Well, the only source I could find was this Japanese website, and I had to look very deep to find some info on this version, and I had to use Google Translate to help me understand the Japanese text, so please keep that in mind. I'll try to make sense of it as best I can. The performance of each racer has been adjusted. For example, Billy the Tough was the fastest in all courses, but in the USA edition that's not the case. Supposedly each car is faster depending on the course they're in. It is also said that the order of the courses have changed. Toon Village and Toon Island have been swapped in the championship race and ordered in order of difficulty. I thought this was weird and incorrect at first because Toon Island started first, then Toon Village was the next course, but it turns out the Japanese original started with Toon Village first, then Toon Island. But when the game was released in the US and Europe, those courses were swapped. The USA edition follows that swap too. Drifting has been improved as well, and it's easier to maintain even when you're not accelerating. Crazy Coaster had a music track that was replaced in the Western version, probably because it was too soothing for this calamity of a track. The USA edition got the Western version of that music track. God of a House 2's track got an arranged version in the Western version, and the USA edition would use that version too. Some text would change, but I wasn't able to find what these changes were since, from what I've seen, all versions are in English. Other changes include the Motor Toon Grand Prix are turning the easy to use car upside down. Again, maybe Google Translate is being a wrong'un, but I think vehicles now slow down significantly when it touches a wall. Opponent racers at the highest difficulties are a little slower, and I think the missile has been tweaked to where it doesn't work against you. But yeah, that's what I was able to find. And you know what? I welcome these changes because the USA edition somehow plays better. I'm serious. I can never probably get to grips with most of the more technical races in the original sequel, but I was able to here. The driving mechanics feel a little similar, but the races feel less stiff. Responsiveness has been improved and drifting works a little better as stated. Some of the hard to use drivers feel at least manageable. I didn't win all the races, but I was never last, even in the hard difficulty. That's the major difference. It's been balanced and I enjoyed myself a bit more. It's still not perfect, but any improvements will do when compared to the Western version, and this sure made it a little more fun, which was a surprise for me. In short, if you want to play Motor Toon GP2, play the USA edition, and despite technically being a Japanese exclusive, it's all in English, so you'll be alright. And that's it for the Motor Toon Grand Prix games. Some interesting tidbits here and there, the cartoony aesthetic bridged the gap of classic retro racing, and the potentially new elements of immersive 3D racing, not to mention the game being the testing grounds for what the developers, particularly Yamauchi, really wanted to do. Polys were going to make Gran Turismo, and the rest is history, apart from Omega Boost. I'll add that one to the list. They would become Polyphony Digital after the first GT game, but its origins, the games that gave Yamauchi the trust of the executives for him to allow his studio to fully develop and release Gran Turismo, they're often relegated to a footnote nowadays despite their relative success at the time. Quite the shame really. I mean, sure, the driving mechanics are kinda basic nowadays no matter how complex Polys tried to make it. Kart races with a mix of near realistic driving mechanics without both feeling too awkward, but it was the testing phase for Polys and we got something far more innovative and immersive out of it, and we gotta give thanks to Motor Toon Grand Prix for that. And hey, if we can give the games this, the characters in terms of designs still hold up. And that should be it. Apologies for the prolonged wait for the much longer videos like this one. In fact, this review has been in production since last year. Moreover, I wrote the review for the first Motor Toon GB game in 2020 and a review for the sequel this year. Making longer videos like this is less messy for my channel. That means I can take my time to produce much better content, to make videos like these the best they can be. At least with Froban Smalls, there's simple short videos I can make quickly so you won't have to wait for content. So what's next? I won't say a word. I like to take things one step at a time instead of having multiple projects at once. If I did the latter, I'll return to having content that isn't good. And for those who found my one rock reference, stay hydrated. What? I got nothing. Well, I think that's it for my final thoughts. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then do what you choose. I'm Froban, and this has been another game review. See you next video.
Congratulations, my man.